Okay. All right, I'm just getting set up. Just checking. Yeah, because I'm trying to go live on both Reddit and Instagram. I mean, not Instagram, YouTube. So I'm just making sure they both work. Whoops, turn the volume down. All right, so cool. It's good to be able to do both. So I just need to scroll. All right, how will I do this? All right, cool. So good morning. I'm just gonna do, so today I just want to do a bit of like so I got some new bag of clay after basically the old one isn't working, and I'll explain why. But basically, look at this. Oh, I need to turn the other camera on. 1 sec. I'm so disorganized. Oh, hello everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I'm surprised. I don't know, I'm always surprised how many people is on here. Like, I know it's only 6 and 1 is probably myself, but yeah, so the old clay wasn't working because So this is the one I just got fired recently with the second version of my glaze. It's still not finished yet, but I just want to show what the problem with the clay is. I'm just going to center this. But see what happens to the rim? See how like the shape, it becomes an oval shape? So this was a mid-fire clay that's been fired too high. So I'm switching to a different clay which can take high fire, and hopefully I can solve this issue, because this is basically, I guess, I wouldn't be able to use this normally. Like, I use it myself just because I'm testing it out, but I wouldn't sell something this wonky for sure. Anyway, so I've got this new clay called Keen's number 7. So for those who are in Australia, that's the one I'm using. You probably won't be able to get that overseas just because clays don't really export and import. And it gives a similar look to this clay where it's a little bit speckly. I can't tip this because it's got coffee in it. So hopefully it gives me a similar look, but if it's going to stay in shape, then that's great. And okay, so also for those who are on Reddit, I'm actually also streaming live on YouTube just because I'm testing both at the same time and it seems to be working. So for a better quality video, you can go to the YouTube channel, and then I'm actually live right now. So let's get started. So I'm testing this new clay. What I'm gonna make, I think I want to make like a pasta bowl. So something a little bit more shallow and flat, and then kind of curve upwards, just because that's something I like to use. So we'll start with that. I did a bit of throwing yesterday, so I did a bunch of cups, and so far, I really like the way this clay throws. It's quite soft. It's definitely a finer clay, so it's got smoother texture and particles. So there's speckles in it, but there's not much, there's basically no grog or sand in it, so it's quite easy on the hand. I don't have my own kiln, so I get all my stuff fired at a studio, just because I would love to have my own kiln, and if I had the space for it, I would. But at this very moment, I'm renting, so kiln is kind of out of the question, but yeah, it's definitely something I'm aiming towards. So when I get my own space, I'll buy a kiln right away. That's a must. It says ceramic once it's end up looking like a... Oh. Well, that's what all ceramic is, basically, like stone. And depending on the clay and the stuff, like nowadays, pieces that looks like stone or has that kind of stony texture are quite popular. Like look at all the Japanese chawan and stuff, and usually they have a very rustic stone-like texture to them. So, you know, like one person's stone is another person's bowl. So I'm just centering this clay, making sure it's nice and even. Hello, Bianca. I think, have I seen you before? Your name looks familiar. I don't know. Maybe you've been in one of the streams. Alright, so let's switch to here, just for the better look of what I'm doing. Where is my sponge? I'm missing a small sponge. Here it is. Oh, Hawaii. What time is it over there? I think my auntie lives in Hawaii. Actually, a lot of my family lives in Hawaii. Alright, so I'm just going to open up. So now I'm opening up the clay. I'm just creating a well. So I'm going to keep going until I get the right thickness, which is not yet. How do you get all your work to the studio and not break everything? I pack them with a lot of foam and I drive very carefully. It's not far, it's like a 6 minutes drive. And for those on YouTube who are confused, I am streaming both on Reddit and YouTube. So I'm answering questions and comments from both sides. So in case it gets a bit confusing, that's what's happening. But maybe I'll try and explain what the question is. Trade you desserts for yeah, I'll happily have dessert for ceramics. Alright, so now I think that's about the right thickness on the bottom. So the thing about platters and bowl or like flat bowls is you want to keep a fair amount of clay on the base if you're trimming a foot, which I always do. So now instead of pushing down, I am going to push out. And I'm going to slowly go up as I'm doing it too. So I'm just going to think about what sort of curve I'm after. Oh my god, the font is so small. I need to move my laptop closer. How do you get all your work? Oh, I've read that already. Actually, I'll just read it on my phone. What are we making and how do I get a pot of wheels? Because yours just inspired me. So I am making a pasta bowl. So a shallow kind of bowl. And I got the wheel just from the local shop. So the pottery supply shop, they have a whole bunch of these in stock. So you can get it there, but if you're in like America and stuff, I'm sure you can just get it online. You guys also have quite good prices, which I'm very jealous of. I'm just thinking how wide I want this. That's why I'm kind of pausing and starting. I think I need to go wider than this, and this might be too much clay, to be honest. So part of me wonder if I want to just make this into a bowl. Because a bowl could take a lot more clay, because I can go quite wide with it. Maybe I'll do that. I'll do a pasta bowl with a smaller lump of clay later. Alright, so now I'm just going to compress the bottom. Hi Luke, welcome back. So for the clay, so the question on YouTube is how did I make my own clay trap? So there's a website I saw. It's a blog from a potter who had a rough design with the same 3-bucket system. I think I've linked it in one of the comments, but I can, when I get a chance, I can send that to you. But if you Google clay trap buckets, you should be able to find it. Alright, so now I'm going to bring a lot of this clay up. So I've decided I'm going to go for a bowl shape instead of a flat pasta bowl, just because I can. So now I'm just going to bring the wall straight up. Also, the tool that I'm testing today, so I just received these. They're called mudtools. And this is a lot stiffer than what I'm used to. So usually they come in different color. The red one's really soft, the blue one's firmer, and the green one is almost like solid. Like I can barely bend this. So this is good for making the inner shape of the bowl. So I'm just gonna try that out today. How long have I been doing pottery? I've been doing pottery for about 2.5 years. So I did 2 years of kind of just weekly hobby beginner classes. And then a few months ago, I got my own setup at home. And then I started doing it a little bit more seriously. I mean, I've always treated it quite seriously, but it's not until I have my own wheel that I can really just practice. So I'm going to grab a lump of clay there. And then I'll just bring it all up. I just need to stop halfway because there's a lot of slip. So I'll try my best to keep track of all the chats. But I'm sorry if I miss some here and there, just because it looks like Reddit's getting busier now. Oh, you're welcome, Luke. It's nice seeing you guys coming back over and over. Just knowing that people do enjoy it. I'm gonna get this before I. Yep. Just it's good to know that people enjoy the stream. And I remember you asking me a few days ago how to start pottery a bit cheaper. And if you go look up on Instagram a page called Hand and Fire, she does a lot of hand building work, and she actually has some tutorials online that starts at $10, and then you can pay as much as you can afford. It's like a kind of donation system, but she builds teacups and teapots without using a wheel. So if you want to give pottery a try, I would suggest you grabbing one of those tutorials and starting there, because all you need is some clay and some kind of knives and needles and just little like household items you can probably use, like rolling pins and stuff. So you can start making stuff quite cheap and quite, and the stuff that she makes is amazing. So check out Hand and Fire. Just let me put my chat on full screen on my phone so I can see Reddit better. Okay. What piece have you made that you're proud of? A lot of stuff I use at home I'm very proud of. So these are also new. So this is another mud tool that I was talking about. So I'm trying new tools and new clay for those who are wondering. So this is a blue, which is a little bit more flexible than the green, I think, but it's also thinner. Although I feel like I need to bring this in a little bit more first. All right, so now I'm going to start lifting the walls. Are the wheels hard to clean? Not really. I think they're fairly easy. So I'm using 2 ribs here. So see how it scrapes off a lot of the softer clay? It makes the wall a lot stronger. This is a method I've been practicing recently, and it's actually on one of my latest YouTube videos of like learning how to make larger bowls. That's something that's quite, I think, a good skill to have, but this seems like the wrong shape. I don't feel like this is the right shape for it. But we'll see. It just seems so sharp at the corner. I keep digging in to the wrong spot. I'll use this side because it's got the rounded corner. So I'm pushing outwards until it reaches that, and then I'm going up. I'm also just letting it stretch. That's not bad. And then I'm gonna clean up the rim and just compress it. So far so good. We've got nice smooth curve on the inside, nice smooth curve on the outside, but there's still a lot of clay. So let's do that a few more times. Where am I from? So I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. Do you use the curved edge too? Yes. So I use the curved edge, I guess, for when I'm making curves. And then, actually, I should probably use the curved edge here. I don't know. Again, this is something I'm kind of just learning. I should probably slow my wheel down a bit as well. But see how the bowl's starting to take shape? It's gaining height and it's also gaining width. Oh, my camera's gonna be too tight for this shot. I might zoom out in a bit if it gets too big. All right. So feel more like this. Although the only thing it bothers me about this method is that I'm getting all this clay still down here. So I think I'm gonna try doing a rip on the inside and a sponge on the outside. See how that works. Maybe I'll stay with the blue and I'll give it a little bit of water. So yeah, so let's just try and I want to bring up a lot of this clay. Alright, that's better. Okay, so I don't mind this much clay. I think that's okay. To be honest, I don't want to put too much of a curve down here yet, because that's where the weakness usually is. If you start making bowl that's too wide out here, it collapses a lot easier. So I'm going to focus more on this, this height. Alright, I'm going to use my hand, just because it feels a bit awkward right now. So I'm going to use my fingers. I'm going to lift the wall up. So when throwing with fingers, it needs a lot more moisture. With the rip, you can get away with being a little bit drier. Hello to those who just joined us on Reddit. So I'm also slowing my wheel down a bit, because as it gets wider, if the wheel spins too fast, it's gonna push the rim outwards, and I don't want it to go too wide because that's how it starts to collapse. But yeah, so this nail clay, it's quite nice to throw. It's got some bounce to it, and it seems to hold its shape quite well. Alright, so that's pretty good. The rim's got a little bit wonky, so I'm just compressing it down again. So this is Keen's number 7 with speckle. I don't know if the number 7 always had speckle, but it had a speckle tag on it, so I don't know if it's a specific one, but it's a number 7. And I also bought a bag of number 33. Which is a more iron heavy clay, so it's basically red because of all the iron. I prefer white clay just because it's easy to clean, and it doesn't stain things as much. If you get red clay on your clothing, it stains it. Okay, I'm just going to catch up with the Reddit chat. If I'm not very good at all making pottery, can I still call myself a pothead? Yeah, why not? You don't have to be good at something to, you know, be something. And no one started off being good. All right, so I think this height is good. I'm not gonna thin out this rim anymore because with a bowl it needs support. So I'm gonna now widen it as well as give it a bit of a curve. So now with the tools again, I'm going outwards. So now it's getting a little bit more shallow. See how much comes out? So this is all wet clay that it's nice to get rid of because it just saturates the clay and it makes it a lot more, it makes it weaker overall. All right, so now time to try this nail guy. So basically what I want to do is I want to keep the rim roughly where this is, and then with this curve, I'm going to push down this area. So kind of like the bottom 2/3 of the bowl, I want to widen this out to about here. So it will give me a more straight to rim and then a rounded curve. Hopefully, that's the idea. We'll see how it is. So how's the wheel controlled? So the wheel is controlled by a foot pedal here, and it's basically like driving. You know, you press down, it goes faster. You lift it up, it goes slower. This wheel in particular, it maintains its speed, so I can lift my foot off, and it will just keep going at the same speed, which is very handy. Some wheels you have to keep the pressure on, and it actually gets very tiring. All right, so I'm gonna support the outside with my finger or with my hand, and with the inside I'm gonna shape with, oh, my hair's itching me. Shape with this new tool. So I think this is like the second time I've used it, so I don't know. I think a little bit more water on the outside. Okay. Here we go. So keeping the top pretty much the same, and then applying pressure to the bottom. I'm still supporting it. Really stretching it. All right, that wasn't bad. So now this is quite smooth. I didn't quite get the middle, but the wall itself is looking good. I think I need to, I was doing it at around 3 o'clock. I think I need to come in a little bit more so that I can flatten the tool and really get that curve. But it's getting there. Yeah, it's cruise control. All right, so again, flattening the tool out a little bit more. Lots of pressure down here. Sliding towards the middle and trying to maintain that curve and that shape. My hand's a bit shaky. Almost. That's looking pretty good. I'm just gonna stop the wheel for a sec. So all this is looking good. The middle is still not quite there. You can see a little, just a little bit of clay stuck there. So now I'm going to use 2 hands just to have a bit more stability, and I'm not going to pressure it as much. I just want to get that middle area, which I'm still, oh, there we go. All right. And then I'm going to slowly lift. I don't know if you guys can tell on the stream, but basically it's one continuous surface all the way. The middle is still not exactly perfect, but I quite like this. So it gives me quite a nice shape. So I'm going to try that again. So I'm trying to find an angle where the tool touches most of the bowl. And I'm also giving a little bit more pressure down the middle, and that helps compress it. All right, so I think that's pretty good. I'm going to stop there. In terms of the inside, I'm really happy with that. I'm going to scrape the outside just to clean it up, and this will also help it dry a lot easier later on. Like so. Oh, the camera's gone haywire. All right. Going back to this for a bit. I'm going to let that camera try and settle down a bit. Okay, so the inside's good, the outside's good. Now I just need to get this rim looking nice. So I don't want it too sharp. Although I quite like a flat rim. Maybe that's nicer than a round one. Decision. So maybe... No, I think I'll round it out. I think round is always a little bit nicer to use, but maybe with a bit of that profile, like so. Yeah, that feels good. Just gonna clean up this. So now it's basically just finishing touches. I just wanna get it as close to perfect as I can. And that'll just save me time later on when I have to trim this. All right, I'm happy with that. So now I'm gonna trim a bit of this corner. So I'm not doing music today because I'm also streaming on YouTube, and you know how YouTube's a bit, you know, they're a bit more strict in terms of copyright and stuff. So I'm just getting rid of a lot of this excess clay. I won't take too much off because that clay there helps support the rest of the bowl. And now I'm just gonna find my wire tool. The puns on Reddit are amazing. Yeah, I'll see how this goes with my glaze. Someone just mentioning that the clay that I'm using, which is called a number 7, I think it's meant to have a pretty good fit, so it doesn't expand too much. All right. I think I tightened the wire too much around my finger. It feels like I'm cutting myself. All right, so bit of a wide bowl. So I'm just gonna basically give myself a bit feedback. So it could be thinner. It could definitely be thinner, especially down here. But I think it's okay, especially for a bowl. It's probably safer just to leave a bit of extra clay. I can always trim down a lot of this area, like here, and then it will curve inward a little bit more. A lot of this is going to be gone because I'm going to give it a foot ring. So once it's trimmed out, it should feel a lot lighter. But I think the main thing I want to focus on is just getting the inside nice and smooth, which I think I have done a decent job today. There's a water drop there. Hopefully it doesn't cause too much trouble. I didn't want to wipe it because I don't want to ruin the curve. But yeah, if I just look at the inside, it's pretty well made. Looking at the outside, especially the profile, it doesn't feel that great. But I think once it's trimmed, it'll be okay. So I think it's a good practice, and I'm pretty happy with the result. So let's do another. Where am I going to put this? I'll put this here. Okay, so, all right, so while I clean my hand and get another lump of clay ready to go, feel free to ask me anything, especially Reddit, because I know Reddit has a lot of people who have no experience in pottery. I imagine on YouTube, people who are watching now would either have a bit of background or a bit of interest. Plant lady here, isn't got pottery because I want to make pots for my plant friends. Oh, me too. I've made some planter pots. If you look at the rubber plant over there, that's one that I've made for it. If firing to cone 5 to 6, clay becomes vitrified. If left unglazed, is it still porous? I think cone 6 is fine from what I've been taught. It should still be watertight as long as you're using stoneware, mid-fire stoneware, and not obviously terracotta and stuff. It's not watertight, so it's still porous. But at the same time, it's like I don't see a reason why you shouldn't glaze planter pots. I think glazing it's another way to add more interest to it. So if you can glaze, why not? And it gives you extra safety, you know, just in case. But yeah, cone 6 stoneware should not be porous. All right. Yeah, I love my Shimpo. I can't, like, I think I've tried once using a different wheel and I couldn't stand it. Like the older ones where they don't have the speed hold and then they don't have the free wheel either. I yeah, I think I was spoiled. Just because I learned pottery on the Shimpo, and I got so used to it that I can't use anything else. What are the difference between hand building and using a wheel? Well, it's just a different method of making. Using the wheel gives you more, I guess, symmetrical pieces, and it's also a lot faster. So the wheel is basically, like back in the old days, it's the production method, it's the mass producing method. Where hand building is before the wheel was invented, and it was a much slower process. But they both have their value, especially nowadays. There's no, the difference is just a personal taste. And hand building is a lot cheaper. So just apologies for the noise. Actually, I'm going to mute myself for a sec. So the question is, who introduced me to making pottery? So I am also a food photographer. Some of you have probably heard this backstory already, but so I started as a food photographer maybe 8 years ago. I'm still doing it now. And I work with food stylists a lot. So food stylists would have props, like a collection of props, and they're usually, handmade ceramics that is basically similar to what I'm doing now. And I wanted to make things that I can photograph. And from there, I started classes and got really into it. And then I decided I want to make this into a business, basically. Muting again, just for 1 sec, because the plastic, doesn't sound good. Yeah, so since then I went to class and then got my own wheel, got my setup. So I've been practicing since. So I would say I'm still pretty much a beginner, maybe like somewhere between beginner and intermediate, but I've got a long way to go in terms of learning and yeah. So I'm being a bit lazy, so I'm not wedging my clay today. So I'm just kind of beating them into shape. But it's freshly out of a bag, so there shouldn't be any air bubbles in it anyway. What's a good idea for a natural form pottery project for my college class? I don't know, do your own homework. But what's something I would do? I don't know, I would probably experiment with wild clay. There's something about a project that kind of compares local clay, like, having a theme based on where you found the clay could be interesting, but I feel like that's definitely been done before. It's not a new concept. Just trying to find where my bats are. Or maybe look at like traditional pottery, maybe historical potteries and evolution. But yeah, a lot of ideas seems pretty much done. Something easy. I don't know, do a gradient of glaze. Do like a big glaze testing thing. So you can have like 50 cups in just one big gradient. Could be nice. I've seen someone do a terracotta and stoneware mixture, and then each cup had a different ratio so that you get this kind of gradient of red to kind of white, which was quite nice too. That's part of the reason why I wish I did pottery in like a higher education setting, because I think a project like that would be very interesting in terms of like a creative process. Like when I did when I did photography, it was also not a very artistic course. It was more of a commercial course. So yeah, I kind of wish I did more artistic education. I think we're making mostly bowls today. And if anyone on Reddit wants to see a higher quality stream, just go down to the YouTube link. I'm streaming to YouTube right now as well. So I think doing both is a good idea, because then I get the best of both worlds. I can get the audience of Reddit, and then I can get the quality of YouTube. So Luke is asking, if I start hand building, how would I go about getting it fired? So I think that's a matter of looking at what's around you. If there's any pottery supply shop, often they do a firing surface, or some school or some pottery workshop might do that too. So it's very local dependent. So on Google, just search pottery firing surface or ceramic firing surface and see what comes up near you. And then you can always ask them questions, see how much it is. So the one that I use, they charge by the kilo. Yeah, have a look and see what's around you, because it's different everywhere. But since there's a lot of hobbyists doing ceramics now, there's a lot more support surfaces like that. And it's probably a good idea to make friends with people at those shops, because they can recommend you kind of what clay is good for hand building and what kind of tools you can get. People who work at those shops are usually really friendly and very helpful. Have I ever studied... I've got clay on my phone so I can't see. Oh no, I screwed up. Yeah, I'm Australian. Have you ever studied antique pottery up close? There was a ceramic exhibition in the NGV here in Victoria, so the National Gallery of Victoria, and they had some very interesting pottery stuff. Also at another art gallery, there was a big pottery exhibition, and there was a lot of stuff, but that's more modern stuff, I guess. So not exactly antique, but yeah. And I think there's a permanent exhibition here in NGV that is basically historical pottery and ceramics. So there's a lot of I think there's definitely from all around the world. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there. That's one thing I miss about pre-COVID is galleries. Yeah. I miss going to galleries and museums. Alright, so I'm just making another bowl. I think if this clay comes out the way I want it to, in terms of like the color and texture, I think this is something I'll happily use because it throws very well. Alright, so this one will be more of a pasta bowl. So just going to open this up. Quite flat in the middle. That's not as flat as I could do it, but it's alright. Someone just said, I always want to give pottery a spin. I don't know why, but Reddit and puns is just... it goes hand in hand together. Alright, so a flat base like this, you have to make sure the clay is nice and compressed and nice and even throughout, because if any weakness would create cracks during drying and during firing. So plate, I think it's one of the things that fails a bit more often than other shapes. So I'm going to spend a bit of time and effort just smoothing this out, making it even. and getting rid of that little dimple in the middle, which I just failed. So I'm going to rely on tools a bit. Actually, let me try this. Let's try this new mud tool. It's a bit big, but it's all right. So one thing I don't like about silicone tools is it leaves a bit of funny marks. It's like little zebra bands. And I don't know why, but you can, like if you run your finger through a silicone rib, it doesn't feel perfectly smooth. There's little bumps in it. Where I find a wooden tool gives me a nicer edge. Right, I think that's pretty good. I'm just gonna round this back out because I know I'm creating a lot of weird lines here. So one way with plate is just simply sticking. Yeah, just close the door. So if I just sticking a finger in there or using a little tool like this, it lifts a lot of that clay upwards. You've got to stop with those puns. You're distracting me. All right. So now it's just about lifting this wall up a little bit. Like so. I think I want to go a little bit higher. There's a dry spot there, but that's okay. All right, and also have to be conscious not to thin this rim down too much. So I'm just going to compress that back down a bit, also shape it, make it a little bit rounder. That's nice. So the outside is a bit straight, but I think I'll round it out during trimming. So now I've got this little kind of lower area here. It's a little bit higher here and it goes back down. So it's not quite even yet. So that's something I'm gonna try and get rid of. You bring this down a little bit and then just even it out. That's a bit better. Yeah, potters, I think. So there's two terms, right? There's potters and there's ceramicists. And there is a bit of a difference. So pottery is on the wheel. And ceramics is basically everything that's made out of clay. So all potteries are ceramics, but not all ceramics are pottery. So there is a bit of a difference. So I know my business is called Dear Alice Ceramics, even though right now, technically, I would not call myself a ceramicist because I don't do anything outside of the wheel. But I'm also calling it that because I'm open to the idea of doing that in the future. And I don't want to limit myself because of the name. All right, so that is a pretty nice little pasta bowl, I would say. Have you ever been to Shepperton Art Gallery? No, I don't even know if I've ever been to Shepperton. I know it's quite far. That's great because I know a lot of potter lives out in the regional Victoria area, and I think this is consistent throughout the world because it's a lot. Pottery requires a decent amount of space. And it's obviously cheaper to have that space out in the country. So yeah, I do know that regional areas usually have a decent a decent amount of pottery in terms of community and art and, you know, galleries and stuff like that. So yeah, so you always see a little art gallery in small regional towns, and it's great. So I would say this is done. Happy with that. Looks good, looks flat. I mean, it's a pretty basic shape, but I think the things that I want to make, I don't want to make anything too complicated. I want to make things that people can use every day. I think that's very important, at least for me. Oh, I'm not cutting this very well. Looks like it lifted up a tiny bit. Cutting plate, look at my finger. Cutting plate is a little bit trickier. But yeah. Looks like I'm just gonna get this off the bat. So, oh, wrong camera. So a nice little plate. It's a little, so I would say it's about just under a centimeter of bottom. And once that's trimmed, it'll probably be even less. But yeah, I'm happy with that. I like this. I really like this clay. What do you call that sponge I use to smooth out the rim? So this, I think people just call it a chamois. So basically it's, you know those kind of car washing cloth you use to like dry cars or like windows? It's basically a piece of that. So they kind of, they soak up water well, but they're not like, they've got a very smooth texture to them. Cool. Let me clean my hands again. Yeah, so some people use, so you can just buy like chamois and cut them up. I know some people use rubber bands. Some people use plastic bags, like the tougher, kind of like the same plastic bag that you get the clay from. So yeah, so it's just any kind of smooth texture that you can form a little arch. Yeah, doesn't have to be this particular one. I find pottery, a lot of things you can use just like random items for. All right, let me restart my Reddit stream. So let me just check, how long have I been going on YouTube? Doesn't really tell me. So, Luke's got a few more questions. But if there's a different reel than before, is it just a different attachment? No, this is the same wheel as I've always used. So on the wheel, there's something called bats, which are basically these. So those are kind of like attachment I use where, so normally if you throw straight onto the wheel, you have to lift your piece off the wheel to put it somewhere else. I prefer not to do that because I'm not very good at doing it, and usually it kind of deforms the piece. So I use a system called bats, which is basically a platform that you throw on. So for example, these smaller ones, I can make smaller things on, and then I can just lift it up and then put it away. That way there's less handling of the piece and there's less chance of like warping it. And it just makes doing things a lot easier. So they also come in kind of larger versions like these. All there is there's 2 pins on my wheel, like here. So there's 2 of them. And then on the bottom of the bats, I drill 2 holes into them. And then that way it just holds it in place. So it's fairly simple, but it makes life a lot easier, especially if you're making a large amount of things. And this is just, it's called bat mat. It's just there to kind of give a little softer area for the bat to sit on, and it also creates a bit of friction so that the bat doesn't slip around. So even if the pins are here, there's still a little bit of wiggle because the hole kind of get, you know, wear and tear and it gets a bit bigger. It doesn't sit perfectly kind of straight on it, and that way it just keeps it nice and stable. Yeah. Okay, about an hour. Okay, so let's do, just because I feel like it. I've got a bit of trimming I have to do, so I might do that. Obviously, it's not going to be as exciting as throwing, but I'll just keep the stream alive if anyone wants to stay and watch that too. So I've made a bit of, I'm just going to give the wheel a quick clean. So basically all I need to do is just sponge this. Like, I know I've only made 2 pieces, but my wheel is still fairly clean. I tend not to use too much water. So for those who are throwing at home, it's probably a good idea to learn to use a little bit less water just for cleaning purposes. It's also a habit I got from class because we always have to clean our wheel after class. So if I was able to throw a little bit drier, it makes cleaning a lot easier, then I can spend more time throwing. Oh, there's a fly. All right, so I'm gonna move. Look at these. So these are the cups I made yesterday. I'm gonna put these guys. So yeah, just a little recap. That's what we've done so far. Yeah. And once they're dry enough, I'll flip them upside down like this. So I like drying my things upside down because it allows the rim to kind of flatten out a bit, and it also helps even out the drying because the base is the thickest part and usually takes the longest to dry. If it stays attached to a surface, it doesn't get the same airflow. So this way it just dries a bit more evenly. All right. So I'm just gonna do a bit of trimming. Oh, there's clay here. So just let me switch to my other tools. So trimming tools and throwing tools are 2 different things. Okay. Alright, so let's start. So everything's quite dry. Let's start with this little bowl. So this is a little small bowl I made yesterday. In this same clay. Alright, I'm also gonna practice a bit of tap centering. So, oh, but it's already centered. Yeah, that's pretty good actually. Alright, so just a quick little step by step. When you're trimming, basically you get the pot center so it sits right in the middle and it's nice and even, and then you get a little clay, stick it down the wheel, and that just acts as a little support so it doesn't slide around. There are different methods to do this. Some people put water on the bat or on the wheel and then just stick the pot down, which also works, but I think I don't like doing it that way just because it changes the rim a little bit because it's making it wet. All right, and then, so these are the trimming tools. So the stuff that I've got either comes in a loop like this, or it's like a kind of flat piece of metal like that. And the difference is just personal preference. So I'm just tapping to see how much I have to play with. And it sounds pretty hollow in the middle, so I have to be careful. So I'm gonna give this a foot, and a fairly small one at that. So maybe I'll say somewhere there for the outside and around here for the inside. So this will be the foot. So I'm just going to carve this out. I'm going to carve this out. So we'll start on the outside. So this is called leather heart. Basically, you can touch the pot and it's not going to leave any marks. But it's still soft enough that you can trim it. So when it comes out these little ribbons, when it comes out like this, that's a pretty good consistency. And this clay is also quite smooth and soft to trim. So I'm going to trim out a lot of this kind of, I guess, shoulder area. Because I know there's a little bit more clay around here, which is usually what happens when you make bowls. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit more. So it's not uncommon to accidentally trim through a piece. So it's always good to just double check every now and then how much clay is left. I know I keep saying this, but I really like this clay. It feels like it's easier to work with compared to the Chris's Mid-Fire. Reminds me of like PB103, which is stoneware that's almost like porcelain in terms of the way it handles. But I mean, that's all very localized information, so it's irrelevant for most people who's watching right now. The trimming is very satisfying, yeah. It's quite nice to watch. So I'm just being a little bit more gentle around here. Like, I don't need to trim much in the middle, right? Because as long as it's lower than the foot, then that's fine. But I'll go a little bit more than that. Because this foot's quite small, I'm going to switch to this guy as well. So much like throwing, it's just all about stability. Because the wheel does all the work. So the ideal shape for the base is usually the same as the inside. So the outside should always match the inside. So this should be a little concave shape because when you flip the bowl upside down, it's got the little bowl shape down the middle. All right, so that's probably a little bit too high. I'm just gonna knock it down a touch. So I want it smooth and round and not pointy. So I'm just being quite gentle. Very little pressure. Alright, so that's pretty good there. I'm gonna get rid of a little bit more of this kind of corner. And just create a bit of a more rounded shape as well. pretty happy with that. Just gonna finish it off. Smoothing that all out and just giving this a little bit of a sharper foot ring. Like so. And just making sure all the lines blend together. And then now I'm just going to even this out. Just because it's important to make sure this is nice and flat and level, so it doesn't rock back and forth when it's sitting on the table. Alright, I'm going to bevel this edge so it's not too sharp. I'm just going to give it a quick test. That's pretty good. There's a bit of little clay that's got stuck down the side, so I'm just going to clean that up. Because the clay is still quite soft, it's easy for bits and pieces to get embedded into the pot. So I just need to double check and make sure, especially like down in this little corner. Like that. And I also like to use the same chamois that I use for cleaning up the rim. And just smooth out the little corners, and smooth out the little lines. And that'll just make it more comfortable to hold. And then it's, where's my stamps? Oh, there's still a bit of clay stuck here. Actually, I can just sand it down with this. And then stamp. I should hold it inside where I stand because it's quite thin now. Feels like I've gone thinner than I should have. But if I stamp it down too hard, it's already pushed it can push the inside a little bit. So I'm just gonna support it with my hand. And yeah, I won't push very hard, so it's quite a light stamp, but as long as I can see it, it's fine. Yeah, so I'll say that's probably a little bit too thin. You can hear how like tingy it sounds, where the rest sounds a bit more solid. So like listening to that difference, it's a good way to keep track of like how much room you've got. But this, it's really light, so it feels quite well. The rim is still nice and round-ish. Yeah, I think this will be a good little side dish bowl, or like a little rice bowl. I really like this color as well. This little warm kind of tone. No, that's Vader. He's bashing at the door to try and come in. I might let him in, but I'll just ignore him. Alright, so I think I'll do one more. I'll do one more piece on the stream, and then I think I'll call it a day. Hello. Alright, no, I have to ignore him. Yeah. Just do one more. So he always jumps on me like this, and that's exactly where my hand is, so often I'm throwing it, it's just like pushes me off center. So this is a little bit wonky. So I'm just trying to get the base centered. The rest will be fine. So again, a bit of clay for support. So this one, it's got a little bit of room to play, but I'm gonna be careful with this as well, because if that gets caught, it could just throw the whole thing. So I'm just gonna slowly trim it out. There we go. So I think I still want to do foot rings. I think I prefer having foot rings on my cups. I'm just trying to remember what's on the inside. I should have looked at it first. Should always look at the inside first. But give it a rounded corner, because I think that's how the inside is. So even with this clay on the outside supporting it, I'm still applying a bit of pressure down, just so that the pot doesn't bounce. Especially taller shapes, it tends to want to move. This is leather hard, so it's not very damp. Like, it feels dry. There's moisture in it, but it doesn't feel wet. So this is a little bit lumpy, so I'm just gonna make it a little bit skinnier, a little bit narrower, so it kind of tapers inwards. Like that. Maybe a little bit more. So the foot ring's a bit shallow, so I think I need to go a bit lower here. Alright, I think that's it for the outside. That's pretty nice. I can't pet him just because it gives him the wrong idea. Like, he needs to learn this is not pet time. So I don't think I don't think there's a lot of clay here. So be really careful. Alright, let me switch. I might use a small one. Never mind, no I won't because I can't find it. So again, I want to keep a little bit of a concave shape, but I won't go any further than that. So I'm just going to even this out. So it's quite shallow of a foot, but that's more than enough to sit. Like so. Alright, so this outside needs to come down just a bit. Alright, that's it. And then a little bit of a smooth. Make sure there's no bits and pieces stuck. It's looking good. So I'm going to take this off. So the rim's still good, and then, yeah. Where did I put my stamp? So, yeah, that's a better one. All right, so camera focus, there you go. So that's the foot ring with the little stamp. Here's the profile. Oh God, come on, there we go. And then the inside. It's a little bit on the thin side, but the walls are fairly even. Yeah, so I would probably like the foot ring to be a little bit taller. So there's still a bit of clay that I can get rid of, to be honest. So I might do that later, but for now, this is done. Yeah. It's a cute little teacup. But yeah, I prefer foot ring that's a bit taller because it lifts the piece up a little bit higher. But it gives you this little shadow line that makes a piece look more, a bit lighter, and I quite like that. All right, where did you get your stand made? Oh, so it's from America. It's called forclay.com. So they make these kind of specialty stamp for clay. So rubber stamps are usually quite blunt. Where these stamps, it's going to be hard to see, but they kind of taper in. So they start off quite sharp. So when you press it in, you can actually get really fine lines and really distinctive lines. So my Maker's Mark is a bit more intricate. There's a few lines like parallel to each other. So it was important to have something a bit sharper that gives a much cleaner stamp. So like you can really see the details in it, even though it's very small. And for such a small size, it's quite a complicated design. Oh, thank you. All right, so I think I'm gonna call it a day. Got some fairly productive. We've got a bowl made, we've got a plate, and a few trimmings. I'm just gonna finish off the trimming on my own, and I might refine this a little bit more. But yeah, thank you guys for joining me, especially if you've stuck around for the full hour and a bit. Oh, Reddit's blowing up a bit. Alright, I'm gonna call it a day for the YouTube stream. Just because I want to put this on the page, and it might be a little bit long if I keep going. Yeah, so see you guys